Hello and welcome, everybody. We're so glad you joined us again for navigating the holidays. We are just thrilled that you're here with us. We want to get an idea of where you're joining us from, so if you could let us know that, first of all, that would be great. And the format for this is going to be a question and answer. So we've got some questions that have already been presented to us, and we're so happy to answer those. And we would like to also have you submit your questions as they come to you online. So that would be wonderful as well. And we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. Also, if you want to be notified each time that we're going to go live, please get in touch with us. We want to keep you informed. The one caveat to that is you need to turn on notifications on your phone or your computer, and then you can get those updates. So as we get started, I just want to have each of our guest speakers introduce themselves, and we will get right to the questions. So today we're so blessed to have Lisa Watson here with us, and I'll let Lisa introduce herself.
Good morning. Thank you, Michelle. I'm Lisa Watson, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've spent about 15 years in the field. I've did about 10 years doing crisis work in Maricopa County, and have been a clinical director for some different agencies in the Phoenix area, and then also I have a private practice.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. And then we have Joey Landon here.
Hello,
Joey?
I'm Joey, and I guess I'm the PAL kid. I'm the qualifier. I've got about 10 years in addiction, 10 years in recovery. I just celebrated December 2nd, 2019. And, went through a journey with drugs and alcohol that allows me to have the experience to, benefit others, talk to families, talk to the individuals still suffering, makes me uniquely capable of dealing with multiple situations. And I work in the field today, and I've been in the field for about 8 years, since about 2 years after I got into recovery.
Great. Thank you, Joey. And I'm Michelle Humphrey, and I am the parent of 2 sons. Sean is 31 now, and I've been on a journey with him for 16 years. He's a heroin addict. And then I also have a 28-year-old son, Andrew, been on the journey about 9 years with him with his disease. So I also facilitate a PAL meeting for 7.5 years now, and just love working with parents and seeing them get a healing from the PAL curriculum. So anyway, that's who we are, and we're going to just jump right into the questions. The first one that we have that was submitted previously is, my son will be here for Christmas, and I want him here, but there's always so much tension when he's in the house. He's hard to get along with, and he upsets his little sister, and I always end up feeling guilty. What should I do? So I'm going to let Lisa kind of chime in on that first, and then we can also let Joey chime in with it. But Lisa, what are your thoughts on having the son there and the drama that goes along with that at the holidays?
Sure. Well, I would recommend, if you still are having contact with that person in your life, then I would recommend maybe setting up a little bit of time ahead of time to meet and talk with him about what his presence causes within the home, the conflict, people being upset, that sort of thing. Letting him know that you really love him, you want him there, but also that we're not going to allow those negative things to disrupt our family and our holiday time and our time together. So if he's agreeable to whatever terms that you might set up, if he's agreeable to leave, if things become disruptive or escalate, then I would definitely encourage giving him the opportunity to do there and to be a part of the family, with the understanding that that you have those boundaries in place, and if things take a bad turn, then he needs to be able to leave, and I need to be able to enforce that.
Great. I love that. Joey, do you have any comments on that?
What I have is experience. I mean, eventually, obviously, I reached a point where I wasn't welcomed into the home, and that was probably best for all of the family. And, it was pretty set forward and put to me that we love you, but, until you're willing to love yourself and, be together as a family, we can't have any part of this.
Yeah.
And I didn't show up to a lot of events. I remember being like, my favorite time of the year was holidays, because if you sat at the gas station and you were begging for money, people seemed to give you more money around this time. For some reason, I didn't make it to a lot of holidays, even when I was allowed to be there, because the drug dealers close on the holidays, in case you didn't know. And so you're always left dope sick and stranded. And as much as you want to be there and you want to love your family, and it's just not possible, that physical ailment that's holding you back, whether what addiction it is, it's just, you can't show up even though you wanted to show up. So, but yeah, as far as the question goes, usually they're not invited depending on how far they are into their addiction, and it's usually beneficial for everyone, including the addict, because that pain of like wanting to be there for your family is a lot of the big motivator that gets you here. When the family finally gave me that ultimatum, like, we don't even want you here for Christmas, it hurt, and that pain was a big motivating factor.
Good. Yeah, that's a good point. And as a mom, I agree with both of you. One of the things that boundaries that my husband and I had to do or set was, as long as you're active in your disease, we will look forward to the future when we will be able to all get together. But right now we can't do this. So, and it really it's hard on the parents as well. Agree. Okay. So the next question is, my son is leaving a 60-day rehab program early in order to attend a court-ordered DUI conviction 48-hour weekend. He's done so well for 2 months, but is fearful of getting back into the real world. As his father, I hate he's going from two opposite ends of the spectrum. My question, what can I say or do to encourage him with the strength to not give in to temptation? Joey, I immediately thought of you for that, because is there anything somebody could have said to you if you were in that situation, your dad or a family member, that would have helped you?
I'm thinking about my sister, because she just got out of an institution, and she's trying to live life, and it's hard. I had a conversation with her before we came here, and she said, I've worked maybe 1 year in the last 15 years of my life. And I have to get advice from people around me, mentors. It's important that this individual has a mentor, whether it's a spiritual advisor or someone through the church, a sponsor to his 12-step program, because I have to get reminded of like where they're at. And my mentor reminded me of she's where she's at. She's doing the best she can for you, and the reality is she wants you to succeed and your company to succeed more than probably even you do, and that her heart's in it for you, and you need to give her that positive affirmation that you are doing well. You're doing as much as you can, and I appreciate it. I think for him, he needs to get that motivation from his sponsor and reach that cliff where it's like, no matter what happens, I'm okay. And that comes through a 12-step process, or going to the church, like getting that vital sixth sense, that like that God consciousness, just knowing like you got to have it. You can't go through life without it. I mean, I'd be lost. I spent this morning praying and meditating, asking for guidance through my situation, because it's stressful. It's a busy time of year for everyone, not just addicts, alcoholics, human beings. There's a lot to organize, and I found myself this morning, asking for guidance, for direction. Please help me through this.
Good. Lisa, how about as a counselor, if this dad were your client, what would you have to say to him?
Right. I would really encourage him to, sometimes as a parent it's a difficult thing to do, but sometimes we have to step away a little bit and allow others who are, like Joy was saying, maybe sponsors or professional people, to provide that support and guidance and helping that person stay on the right track. Sometimes, especially if we're a little bit enmeshed or we're a little bit enabling, then we get caught up in that whole thing and we can't see real clearly. So I would say for him to just be able to encourage her, I believe in you. I believe that you can do this. I
Great.
love you. I want you to have an amazing future. You're worthy of that. But also at the same time, really on that path, trying to, they've struggled so hard to get to this place where they're doing well. They really need to be surrounded with that support to keep on the right path.
Absolutely. I agree with that. As a parent, I remember quite a few times of being at the last thing that, we could do was give words of encouragement when we had stopped enabling in other ways. And that was one of our favorite things to say was, we believe in you. We're always going to be here for you. And you have what it takes. And so I hope that helps in your situation. So the next question is, I'm so angry at my kid, I don't even want to see him. I know he would spoil the day for everyone else. Can I just say no without feeling consumed with guilt? That's a great question. I think that kind of goes along with our first question. And, I think what I heard from both of you was, as long as you're active in your disease, we will need to look forward to future times when we can get together when you're practicing sobriety and recovery. And I know I felt guilty many times, but I don't think we have to. We choose to do that. So would you both agree that we can say no without feeling guilty?
I think that we can say no. I don't think there's a way to do it without feeling guilty. I think there's a way to do it without being consumed with guilt, as it says. Because there's always going to be that second thought in your mind, am I doing the right thing? But if you look at the experience of all the other PAL families and my experience of what's actually worked for, hundreds, thousands of past individuals, it's when we make those hard line boundaries and we have expectations. And I know my experience is I absolutely hated my family because they gave up on me, and it was their fault. And it was really hard to overcome. And I used it as an excuse for a long time, and why don't you love me? And I was the only boy, and it just don't. But today, I realized it was the biggest motivating factor of me missing my family, wanting to get back to them. And today I actually thank them. Like, thank you for allowing me to grow up. Thank you for not dragging me through this until I'm 30 years old and then trying to tell me to figure it out. No, it was very stern that you're an adult and it's time to figure this out. And I love them for that.
Good.
I mean, honestly, I got sober when I was 21. I just turned 32 yesterday. It was my birthday. And I see kids all the time, 32 years old, 40 years old. And usually the common factor I see, like the guys in prison that, have addictions, or the guys living in halfway houses at 42, their mom's paying their rent still.
Yeah.
And there's like no motivation, to move forward. So I would say use my experience on feeling on the other side of that, and knowing that was one of the biggest factors that helped me get sober at a young age. Was them saying no.
Good. Thank you. Lisa, any other thoughts on that?
I would like to add something that from that, just from a counseling perspective, is that guilt. So many times we will do actions out of guilt, not because that's what's the best thing for that person. So also in that is there's a lot of work to be done on myself. Why can I not set those boundaries? Why can I not make a healthy environment for that person by being able to say no? And so many times as parents, we, out of feeling like we were wanting to love our kids, we give and give and give. And we want to take away any sort of discomfort or pain or anything like that. And part of that, like you were talking about, Joey, is that parents allowing their children to grow up and be adults. You mentioned I see 32-year-old kids. Even just that term, 32-year-old is not a kid, it's an adult, right? So emotionally they may be a kid still, right? But they're definitely capable of being an adult and making adult decisions and engaging in adult activities. And so part of that as a parent is reframing my thought process around this whole thing. And instead of feeling guilty, I'm actually helping you to heal. By making these really tough decisions, by doing the hard things, I'm actually helping you in this. And so, there is going to be a little bit of element of guilt, but that's really my thing, right?
True.
Because in this life that you're in this life of addiction, I don't want to do anything to encourage that to go on any longer. So the more that I do for you, the longer this is going to take for you to get to that place where you turn around and own that and take responsibility and start to make those decisions as an adult.
Totally agree.
Well done. Can we
Yeah.
have an applause for
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
You're professional.
Yeah, and as a mom who who lived that as well, that was something that I had to work through in front of a counselor, and it
Yeah.
took me,
Right.
the better part of a year to come to terms with money and just things do not equal love. There's a lot of other things a lot of other ways you can express love in healthier ways. So I totally agree with you guys on that. And I did feel the guilt as well and the shame. So the next question is, my daughter is 40 years old, has been an alcoholic since she was 16. She's been in rehab 8 times. Each time after rehab, she enters a sober home, stays 6 months, leaves to get her own place with other recovering addicts. She stays sober in this situation for 6 months to a year, then relapses and loses her job. She goes to detox, gets out. She saves no money, has no resources. This pattern repeats itself every time, and each time I give her money so she can eat and have a roof over her head until she gets another job. She is not nearby and lives in another state. My question is, do I give her financial assistance again until she gets another job? Is this enabling? You want to take that one first? You kind of already expressed your opinion on that.
No and yes.
Okay.
So there's 2 questions there, and the answer to the first one is no. Based off of my experience, do I give them financial assistance? I got sober with no financial assistance. And there's resources out there in the community, especially if she's been to 8 treatment centers. She's learned all of the tools that are needed. Probably in multiple states. I don't know what state she's in, but typically there's always some type of assistance where you're able to get assistance with food, and maybe where she's at there's not assistance, and the best assistance you may be able to give her is a bus ticket to where there are resources. Arizona's full of them. I don't know if anybody knew, and they're free.
Yep.
You don't need private insurance. You don't need money from your family to get into treatment, to get into halfway houses, sober living environments. There's so many options out there that won't drain you financially. I think the biggest thing that what she sees and why she continues eight rehabs, stays sober 6 months, is every time she relapses, there's no consequences. I mean, honestly, she gets sober, she gets to go on vacation in rehab. I mean, some of these rehabs are like vacations, that's what they're just calling it. And at the end of it, she, stays sober, and in her mind, she says, well, that wasn't that bad.
Right.
Like, was that really that bad?
Sure.
Like, I got to party, Mom bailed me out again, got me into housing, got me into treatment, figured everything out for me.
Yeah.
And who's the one that's stressed out through this situation? The family.
Right. Absolutely.
The addict is
Yeah.
taken care of.
Sure.
And in their mind, that wasn't that bad.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what deters me from doing it again?
Yeah.
If there was no consequences whatsoever.
Right. Okay. Lisa, what do you think?
And I would say, it sounds to me like, in my experience, is that because she keeps going back to this, is that there are some unresolved issues that need to be dealt with. That when things get difficult, or if she gets triggered, she's going right back to what she knows.
Sure.
And like Joey was saying, maybe the consequences haven't been sufficient enough, but definitely giving her more money, doing again what you've done before. You've seen the outcome of that, right? So the history predicts our future. That's not going to be beneficial. So what you want to do most likely is to get her someplace where she can work on probably some of the underlying issues, the causes, maybe some trauma in the past that are keeping her going back to that sort of coping mechanism.
Right. Right. Yes.
Michelle, I have a question, a 2-part question for you. How did you find joy when they were in active use? And then also, what do the holidays look like now compared to what you thought they would look like, since you have 2 sons in long-term recovery?
Right. That's a great question. That is a really great question. Joy was a really elusive thing for me for quite a few years, for my husband and I. And for a good solid 9 years, we tried to do this journey on our own with no help, no support. And those were really rough years for us. So I think when we finally found PAL, was when we started to regain our joy. And how we did that was we started educating ourselves about addiction. And the first thing that we learned was that it's not a hopeless situation. Yes, it is high-risk behavior, it's scary, and bad things happen to people. But the reality for us was, in our educational process, was that there is a curriculum to addiction and recovery, and if you learn it and study it, you can understand it better. And in turn, that encouraged Kim and I to start taking care of ourselves. So once we did that, and we started just getting together with friends again, going on a vacation now and then, it felt better, and we started finding that joy again. And today, the holidays are much different. We had many, many years with no sons in our life, no family. And we chose to isolate because of the shame and the guilt that came along with having 2 sons caught up in this disease. It was really hard to get together with other family because they all wanted to know what was going on. Mm-hmm. They all had their own opinions of how the guys should be related to and dealt with. So many times Kim and I, went out on our own, or we volunteered at a shelter. We did that for a few years and really loved being with men in recovery. And we kind of fantasized that that would be our son someday, in recovery. So, but today they do have some sobriety under their belts, and the holidays are very, very beautiful. I mean, they are joining us next week at our home. We have a little granddaughter, and honestly, we never thought we would see this time. So they're very, very full of a lot of joy and a lot of gratitude. So I hope that answered that question. Yeah. I was going to chime in on the last part of this question, the question about the 40-year-old daughter and in and out of rehab, just because my older son did this. He was a lot younger. He was in his 20s. But he did this for years, cycle in and out. And one of the things that we learned was that he needed something long-term, but he did not want anything long-term. So he would cycle like this and use up his benefits and then just keep doing this. But one thing that we did that, he says today was helpful was we encouraged, long-term programs. And ultimately, he did not do it because we suggested it, but he finally came to a place where he actually went into and committed to something for a year, and he stayed there. And now he feels like, I was able to create some new coping skills for life and not just keep cycling. So I know in our family that was helpful. Okay, so here we go with the next one. My question is, how do I help my child to adjust after leaving the strict routines of rehab? That's a really good question, and I'm assuming it's an adult child, right? Yeah.
We call them child, right?
Yeah, we do still call them our children. What do you think, Joey, on that one?
Luckily, there's a good transition. I mean, most treatments have like a transition period too, where you're going from, inpatient to residential to partial hospitalization to intensive outpatient to outpatient. So that would go into like a year program or the step down phases. And the rehab should be doing a really good job at preparing you and teaching you life skills and getting ready for a job and maybe helping you build a resume. They should have a computer available in the treatment center if it's, a quality place. But also there's the step down into the sober living, which still provides that, stability. You have to wake up at a certain time, you have to be out of the house, you have to make your bed, you have a chore to do. And most of us, addicts, who are new in recovery have never done that sort of thing. And so I know for me, I spent 3.5 years in the sober living environment. And that's where I really learned to live life and get up at a reasonable time and make my bed and make sure I did my chore and pay my rent, because it's a lot it's hard to be accountable to a parent if they're in that situation and coming straight home. You
Agree.
know, and saying, "Hey, you need to help me with rent," because
Right.
that just for some reason never happens. Versus,
Right.
you know, having a renter, you know,
Yeah.
the sober living preferably, telling you your rent's due on this day and it's this much money.
I like what you're saying because I remember somebody told my husband and I, you know, other people in recovery are going to come around your sons and help them in this time, and it's not going to be you two.
Right.
And that was really good for me to hear because I wanted to be the one to do the helping. So thank you, Joey, for that.
I have another question. My daughter left rehab after 10 days, and she said she will be okay on Suboxone. Not sure if she can stay off meth, though. I think the question is, how do you handle that?
Right. That's a great question. That happens very often.
It does.
I know in my situation, my son definitely did basically 2 years of Suboxone and then I think another year of methadone. And during that season of his life, he was never drug-free. He
Right.
was always using other drugs. So for me, for my experience, that is no different. That was no different in my family than him just being actively caught up in his addiction. So my boundaries remain the same. I'm going to be here for you. I'll be supporting you in spirit. When you're ready for sobriety and recovery, please let me know. But in the meantime, I'm going to be praying. I'm going to be with you. But I can't, it's too painful for me to be in it with you physically.
Right.
So I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, for me, a lot of times what I've seen in my experience has been when they do that short term, we know statistics will show that the longer term treatment usually is more effective, at least a year of follow-up, relapse prevention, support groups, counseling, those type of things give you a higher chance of that recovery. And so when someone does something very short term like that, especially early on when they're first starting to get treatment, lots of times that's not sufficient to keep them in their recovery.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, what the individual did, they left treatment against medical advice or against clinical advice. I'm sure no clinician would say this person was ready to take on the real world. And we find that a lot with people that it wasn't that bad. I can do that again, or the treatment option is still available if I need to go back. I don't know where that individual, there's a lot of details to that question, where that individual went, if they went home, if they're living in a secure environment.
Sure.
But, it might be because they're able to just go home and live on Suboxone. There's, strong opinions on MAT, medically assisted treatment, what she's doing, and I think it has its place, and depends on how young that individual is, and obviously a doctor made that determination. But for me, what I wanted to do was go through life and not have a little orange strip determine how my day went.
Sure.
Whether I went to work that day. If I wash them in the washer, my whole life is over. I'm not doing anything. I'm not getting out of bed.
Yeah.
And that's just opinion, because MAT
Sure.
works. There's people that need MAT. There's people that it's benefited. There's people that show up for their kids today and show up to Christmas because of that medication, long time use and
Okay.
severe pain. So.
Good.
We have a conversation going on about parents being tired of having to lock up everything, all the money and medication
True.
over the holidays, if you want to address that.
Right. Yeah, that's a great
That's a really
question.
good one, yeah.
We joke in our PAL meeting about just how crazy our home was, for quite some time. We had everything locked. We had the thermostat locked. We had our bedroom locked. I mean, we lived as prisoners in our own home,
Right.
is what Kim and I tell people now. But at the time, we thought that was normal. We created a situation in our own home that we thought was normal because we thought that our adult sons were basically our responsibility, and no matter what, we had to live with them and figure this out with them. And so what I would encourage parents to do is just to start thinking about, we asked ourselves, is this helping them to grow up by the way we're all living? And really start to come up with some boundaries, like what's okay and what's not okay in my house.
Yeah.
And how am I willing to live? And we never tell anybody what to do, but the thing that Kim and I had to do was ultimately we had to get them out of our house because we had no peace. We did not feel safe, and we were prisoners literally in our own home. So I would encourage whoever is dealing with this to get your support group around you, get a counselor on board to help you to start transitioning into just a different lifestyle, you know. So what do you guys think?
I think sometimes when the parents sense those boundaries, they're followed. You know, you could have an early intervention where that person may have hung out with the wrong people, had the wrong friends, and, you know, you put up the boundaries and write up, you know, maybe a formal contract of expectations, and they're followed. But when that contract's broken, it's, you know, about following through.
Right.
You know, I know a contract when my mom went to PALS, it was 30 days to get off drugs, get a job, help her out with the bills, you know, and get back into school, and I didn't follow it, and she was followed through with her contract, that end of it, you know.
Yep.
And, you know, I was that kid. I brought up some memories of me stealing from my family, going through my dad's stuff. Didn't matter what he locked up, how he locked up. I could find a way to pick it, get the window open, get into the safe. You know, he'd have girlfriend, you know, his girlfriend would come over, I'd go through her purse in the middle of the night, I'd steal money from him. I mean, just, you know, took medications from her, you know, and just...
Right.
I was dangerous. I did not belong, and my dad removed me any way possible, you know. And I still hung on. I mean, I would go sleep in his backyard. He had a boat. I ran my own heater back there. I had an extension cord. He never knew I was back there for a couple of months. And it really took him calling the cops and putting those restraining orders up, and really just being firm, you know, of catching me multiple times, disobeying him, even though when he told me I wasn't allowed there. I mean, I had dreams of just, okay, well, now I'll just sleep in the wash. And when he goes to work, I'll sneak through the dog door. And he had to go to the extremes to remove me from that situation, to protect him, to be able to be happy whether, you know, I was sober or not. And ultimately, that's what my family did. You know, they learned to just be happy, enjoy their holidays, enjoy their life, and not be consumed by my problems.
Yeah. Lisa, what do you think?
And I would think someone else listening to that example that you just called in about, or that you're talking about, someone outside of this situation would say, that's crazy. Who does that? Who would have to lock up everything in their home just to function because of the people in your home, right? And so I think that speaks to what a slippery slope this whole thing is, right? So it started out with your addiction, Joey, and then it moved to now mom's dealing with this, now dad's dealing with this, now other people are dealing with this. And what a slippery slope that is, because their addiction now becomes our addiction, right? I'm checking the phones. I'm up in the middle of the night wondering if they're, you know, dead in a gutter somewhere. And is every time you get a text, is that the dealer? And so all of a sudden, this lifestyle becomes my lifestyle, right? And I didn't invite this in, but all of a sudden I'm doing crazy things that if I step back, I'm going, what is this life that, you know, that we're living now? And so when you're in the middle of it, all of a sudden it gets worse. All of a sudden I'm doing things that I never thought I would do before, right? In the addiction and as the parent.
Absolutely.
And so I think just the importance of like we go back to, like those boundaries and what is healthy, and having those support people that help us gauge that, because our own thoughts get really connected and enmeshed with our emotions in this, and then what happens is our emotions tend to drive us as opposed to using that logical part of our brain that's saying, wait a minute, this is not right, this whole thing is not right, and we need to kind of intervene and fix this, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Okay, I have 2 questions for you. The first is, our daughter is 25 and we have full custody of her 2 children, ages 2 years and 10 months. She's currently in her 4th rehab stay since February, 2 times unsuccessfully discharged and 2 overdoses. My husband and I have set firm boundaries with her, and that she is no longer permitted to live in our home. What we struggle with is whether we should take the children to see her.
That's a great question. I think I'm going to let our counselor answer that, because that's a real thing that happens all the time, and it's a great question.
Yeah.
Really good.
I think that is really significant in that those kids need their parents, right? But I would choose not to have them spend time with her if she's under the influence, right? So if she's thinking clearly and she can be present with them and be a good mom to them in that time that she's with them, that would be supervised, obviously. But they need that, and they need her connection and her encouragement and her affirmations and her love, but not when she's under the influence. And they have had some different treatment centers where the children are able to be in the treatment facility with the mothers, and they found that they're hugely successful because they will, lots of times that's their motivation to get clean and sober is for my child. And they are able to be part of the child's life and the child be part of their life. And so I think lots of times that's a huge motivation. But if they're, if they're bringing negativity to the children, if they're exemplifying what it looks like to be under the influence when they're around them, I would not permit that.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
I'd
That's-
chime in on that,
Yeah,
just from an experience.
Sure.
My sister spent 3 different times in prison, and we've brought her kids to see her, and it was healthy for the kid. But, what usually happens is when she gets out, she doesn't stay on that path. And this last time, we didn't bring her kids to visit her. And she's actually staying sober this time. I think she, missed out on a huge part of her life over this last prison sentence, and it really got to her. But what we found, too, is when she'd get out, she would have broken promises. She would tell these kids, I'll see you. And that was not healthy for the kids. So it really depends on where the person's at, whether they should be seeing the kid or not. I think you can attempt to see them if they're in a rehab, and you can bring them to visitation just so they can feel that comfort of their mom. But when she gets out, she'll probably distance herself if she's not on the right path anyhow. She won't even make time to see those kids. She'll set appointments and not make them, and it'll be very apparent. But if she wants to come see the kids and she's making an effort and she's not obviously under the influence, I would encourage it for the health, the well-being of the kid,
Yeah.
And can I just say something
Sure,
to that, Joy?
sure.
I'm glad that you brought that up. That's so harmful to the kids.
Yeah.
When those parents make those promises and then they don't show up. The kids look forward to it. They've been missing them. They're expecting this, the anticipation of that, and then they don't show. And you envision yourself with a picture of this little guy in front of the window with his backpack ready to go with dad when he comes to pick him up for their special day. And, the sun sets and the kid's still standing there in the window looking for dad that never showed. And just the disappointment. And so my experience working with clients has been that they will say, if I have say maybe a parent who's struggling with addiction, is that I feel about this big. Someone said to me, I felt smaller than an ant because my dad's out there. He's making choices to be places and to do things. Everybody knows drugs are bad, but he's choosing drugs over me. So how insignificant does that make me, right? Makes me less than drugs. And so I don't think parents, when they're in their addiction, obviously they're not making good choices and thinking clearly, but I don't think they understand the extent to which that is sending such negative messages and those shame messages that you mentioned earlier, feeling insignificant and unworthy because of that addiction that's creating that environment for them.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have
Yes.
2 things. One, a comment I just want to share because I think this is a difficult conversation we're having. But this is from someone who says, I'm a recovering addict from heroin, and I am so grateful for my mother. She
Sure.
never gave up on me. This is so amazing to have support for parents and loved ones. I feel it is just as important for loved ones to have support just as much as recovering addicts.
Nice. That's great.
But I also have another question about a daughter who's 36 and still has her own home. For Christmas, she is not welcome for the family get-together because she has been so toxic in the past. I would have her over, but then the rest of the family won't come over. So I'm in the middle and so torn.
Right. That is such a great question, and that we have a question that kind of goes down that road a little bit. It's more about gifts, but it could go the same way when the family is not in agreement as to how to deal with the addicted loved one. It makes it really, really hard. I know that in my case, as a mom of 2 sons who were actively using at the same time, the holidays, they were not invited to my home when they were under the influence. they had come to many events over the course of the years before I got better myself, and they always created a big scene, or they didn't show up, or they came late.
Yeah.
And so it was never healthy. So in retrospect and listening to that question, I totally get that. That was my life for quite a few years of I wanted to be with them, but nobody else did, including my husband, who at times was a little further along in his recovery from codependency than I was. So I just would encourage you to hold your boundary, keep the faith, just stay strong, enjoy your family without your loved one, and just hold out hope that they will be with you at a future time on the holidays. So that's where I would go with that. The follow-up question, maybe you guys can help me with this, is my husband and I are not on the same page regarding gifts. So one feels that it's Christmas and it's time to give generously to all of our kids. The other feels like the addictive loved one already got her gift spread out throughout the year with all of the, quote, help that we have been providing. Is this parent just being petty? And I lived this. I totally get it. What do you guys think? Yeah.
You're the expert in this field.
Right. I mean, this was a question I had to make an appointment and go see my counselor about at the holidays, because I felt like I cannot not give my sons a gift. I really was in that place. And so I'll just share with all of you what she told me, and that was, right now, your sons do not deserve a gift. They are living life outside of the boundaries that you've set, and it's not healthy, and they're using your gifts to turn that into money for drugs. And so, no, the answer is no gifts. And I would not let that go with her. She kept, I kept going back to her, well, I need to give them something. And finally she said, okay, you can give them socks and underwear in a gift bag. And that's what I did. I even felt better about that. So I did that. Now, years later, if they were here with you, they would tell you they sold all of that. And they could sell socks and underwear and use that money to get what they wanted. And, but that was my problem at the time. That was my issue. And I feel very differently about that. I encourage moms all the time at my meeting to, if you feel like buying something, go do something for yourself, or somebody that is in need that really is worthy of that at that time. So
We've got a really powerful question to wrap us up here.
okay.
And let me get back here. Our son is now nasty, evil, and vindictive since we told him not to call us while he's using. The more we hold firm to our boundary, the nastier he gets.
Sure.
He has his sister feeling sorry for him now, and neither wants anything to do with us now. It says, thank God for Pal. What should we do about how to handle our daughter's turnaround?
That's so hard. That, and from my experience dealing with PAL parents, that's not typical. Usually the siblings can see through what the addicted loved one is doing, and so that's a little bit different than what I see with my people in my group. I can tell you that when my sons were volatile, I blocked their calls. I blocked them on Facebook. I blocked them on email. Because they would figure out a way to contact me no matter what. So in my situation, I would never tell anybody to do that, but for me, that was what I had to do to maintain my peace and sanity. What do you guys think as we wrap up?
I think it's a good point, because every time they reach out to you, it just starts that motion again, and that guilt and those thoughts. I don't know how old that the sister is. I don't know how close they're bonded. There's a possibility. I mean, I had 3 sisters I used with them all. I hope that's not the case. I think sometimes there has to go through these phases, though, and these phases may be a period of 5 years, 10 years. But usually once they reach that adult, I shouldn't even say age. I guess it's that adult conscience and that those ways of thinking. You can see the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know for me, I know what some of the things my parents did was wrong. You know, I know, I can see the truth today, and I
Yeah.
think that might
So
not
maybe
be here
she's
now,
not- yeah.
but in the future she may see. Okay, I see why
Right,
why you
right.
guys did that, and that might come through her getting hurt by him. I've
Mm-hmm.
seen sisters try to, help them financially, try to let them stay in their place,
Sure.
sleep on the couch, and they end up getting taken from or robbed, and then they have to experience the pain themselves. They just
Mm-hmm.
because they can't understand it.
Right. Yep. So, what do you think as we wrap up?
Yeah,
on
and that is tough because then you kind of go through that grief and loss of not only, your loved one that's using, but also from the daughter who's not using, right? And so now you feel like you've lost both of them. And like you were both saying, it is a process. It takes time. And so, it's like the first time you have to let your child cry through the night when they're an infant, right? So you don't run in there each time and get them and save them. And so unless the sister's part of the pals and understanding what's happening here, this is all foreign to everybody, right?
Sure.
We've maybe never dealt with any of this before. And so people outside of us will not understand what we're doing. Like you said, everybody had an opinion what
Sure.
we needed to do with the boys. And so knowing that you have the support, that you have the history, the study, the program that you're following that's been tried and true, that's been proven time and time again to be beneficial and to be helpful
Right.
in that recovery, that you have to stick to what you know
Right.
to be true, and to look at the
Right.
history, and the things that we've done in the past have not been helpful. So we've got to do something new, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We're so happy that you were here. If we did not get to your question, please submit them anyway, and some of us will definitely get back to you through Facebook. And thank you. We hope you guys have a Merry Christmas and just a wonderful year in 2020.
And I'm going to add, the voice behind the camera, that if you would like to share this live video, it will be available on the Facebook page in a few minutes from now. You can share it with other people or send other people to the PAL Facebook site to see it.
Thank you to Dinah and Jeremy for helping us today.